Most welcome to come personally, and can I ask him to keep a focus on the future of seaside towns and the vital role they play in our communities.
Thank you. I thank my honourable friend, and he is totally right to focus on seaside towns and coastal communities, because too often they have been forgotten, their infrastructure has been forgotten, and our programme now as this new government is to unite this country with infrastructure, with better education and with technology, to bring opportunity and not just to cities around the country, but to rural and coastal communities as well.
Anna Soubry.
Mr. Speaker, but despite all the optimism, if the Prime Minister fails to secure some magical, mythical New Deal with the European Union, will he promise now at the dispatch box that the matter will return to this sovereign Parliament so that we can decide what happens next before October the 31st? A simple yes or no will do, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, this Parliament has already voted several times to honour the mandate of the people to come out of the EU, and that is what we should do. And I think that the Right Honourable Lady herself voted to trigger Article 50. Unless I'm mistaken, I would encourage her to stick by the pledge she made herself.
Anne Milton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would my right honourable friend agree with me that whilst money for schools is very welcome, further education and apprenticeships are probably the best enabler of social mobility, giving people a second or third chance? And will he make sure that both apprenticeships and further education have the cash that they desperately need?
Thank you, and I want to pay tribute to the Right Honourable Lady also for all the work that she has done in her career, and she is absolutely right to raise the issue of further education and skills. And indeed, I had a long discussion on that very theme last night with the new Education Secretary, and that is going to be a priority of this government. Yes, it is a great thing that 50% of our country, 50% of kids should have the ambition to go to university. But of course, it is equally important that the other kids should acquire the skills they need that can be just as valuable, can lead to just as fantastic careers. And it's vital that we invest now in further education and in skills.
Caroline Lucas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The UK's air pollution is at illegal levels, and scientists are clear we need to do a lot more to address the growing climate crisis. Now, few will forget his pledge to lie down in front of the bulldozers to stop the construction of a third runway at Heathrow Airport. Luckily for him, luckily for us all, he is now in the steering wheel, at the steering wheel, and can turn those bulldozers around. Will he do it? Will he scrap the third runway?
I thank the Right Honourable Lady. Of course, the bulldozers are some way off, but I am following with lively interest the court cases, because I share her concerns about air quality and about pollution. Though I would point out parenthetically, Mr. Speaker, that under this Conservative government, NOx pollution has in fact fallen by 29%. I don't think she didn't point that out, but I will study the outcome of the court cases with a lively interest, Mr. Speaker.
James Dudridge.
Angela Merkel has indicated that there might be some flexibility on the backstop. Does he believe, as I, that the French and Germans are likely to put the EU under more pressure to be flexible?
Well, I thank my honourable friend, and I think that we should approach these talks in the spirit of maximum optimism. As I say, though, optimism seems to be a quality that is deprecated on the benches opposite, and I think it is a well-founded optimism, because common sense dictates that now is the moment for seriousness and for compromise, and that, I think, is what we're going to find.
Sharon Hodgson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This morning's announcement of 12,500 job losses at Nissan worldwide is really worrying. Although at this stage there's no indication that any of these job losses are going to be at the Sunderland plant in my constituency. But it does highlight the fragile nature of the automotive industry. This really should refocus our minds, therefore, on the existential threat that a no-deal Brexit would have on the automotive industry in the UK. So, will the Prime Minister today rule out a no-deal Brexit and commit to an active, innovation-led industrial strategy that will protect our industrial towns and cities?
Mr. Speaker, I will indeed commit to that approach because I think that is the right way forward. And if I may say so, the Nissan in Sunderland has the most efficient plant in the world, and a fantastic thing that is. And just in the last few weeks, she will have noticed that BMW has announced a huge investment to build electric minis at Cowley. JLR's put £1 billion into electric vehicles in Birmingham. And that, by the way, is how we will tackle the climate change issue, not with the hair shirtism of the Greens, but with wonderful new technology made in this country.
Sir Geoffrey Clifton Brown.
Can I warmly congratulate my right honourable friend for lifting the mood of the nation? Would he look at the distribution of the record amount of funds that's going into education, not only to address the funding to further education, but also the distribution between the highest and the lowest funded education authorities?
Mr. Speaker, I thank my honourable. That is, of course, what we are doing. That is the nature of the pledge and the undertaking we are making with the £4.6 billion that we have announced. And the objective, as I think members will know by now, is to lift per capita funding, per pupil funding for primary schools to a minimum everywhere of 4,000 and a minimum everywhere of 5,000 for secondary school pupils.
I want to maximise participation, and therefore there is a premium on brevity. I appeal to colleagues to be unselfish, and to ask single-sentence questions without preamble, so that they're also helping their colleagues. Chris Stevens.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's statement is absent from the phrase workers' or employment rights. So can he commit now that EU workers' rights will be protected in the event of Brexit?
Not only that, Mr. Speaker, but under the freedoms that we will obtain, we will be able, where necessary, to enhance workers' rights in this country.
Maggie through.
Will my right honourable friend look at helping to make the work of the 20,000 more police officers more effective by implementing preventive measures such as restricting the number of properties being converted to houses of multiple occupancy, which are undoubtedly a magnet for antisocial behaviour?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to my honourable friend. Of course, it's vital that we look at prevention measures of all kinds. I'm familiar with the problems that she raises, and I will take it up with my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has listed again a long list of public spending commitments. I, for one, can see the difference between optimism and fantasy. So either the Prime Minister is a fantasist, or he will tell us now how he's going to fund these.
As the honourable lady knows full well, there is ample. Actually, the spending pledges I have made have been modest, Mr. Speaker. I think so far. They have been modest, and they are well within the fiscal headroom that she knows this country currently enjoys. And it is about time that money was spent. But if she is opposing. If the bench is opposite are now opposing that spending, if they now think that we shouldn't be putting another billion into policing, another 4.6 billion into education, then now is the time to speak. The front bench seems to have departed, Mr. Speaker.
Sir Peter Bottomley.
While waiting to vote a fourth time for a negotiated agreement with the EU 27, can I ask my right honourable friend if he'll recognise the achievement of the last 3 years in residential leasehold dealing with abuse, and can he lend his weight to make sure we go on making progress so that leaseholders are not abused or exploited?
Mr. Speaker, I'm well familiar with the problem that my right honourable friend describes and the injustice that many leaseholders have been facing, and I congratulate him on the campaign he has run, and we will make sure that we look after the interests of leaseholders who are being, I think, cheated at the moment.
Andrew Eagle.
Mr. Speaker, the sixth principle of public life
reads, honesty, holders of public office should be truthful. Can the Prime Minister tell us in his public life so far, can he stand at that dispatch box and tell us that he has maintained that principle?
I think, Mr. Speaker, that if the Right Honourable Lady looks at what I've promised the British public and what I've promised the electorate in my political career, and she looks at what I have delivered time and time again when I have said I would deliver X, I've delivered X plus 20, and whether it was cutting crime in London or investing in transport or building more homes, by the way, than the Labour mayor ever did, I am very proud of my record and stand and fight on my record.
Andrew Percy.
Mr. Speaker, can I urge my right honourable friend the Prime Minister to continue all the efforts the government has so far been engaged in to secure and save a future for the British steel industry, which is so important to the north of England, and one way of doing that would be to commit quickly to HS3 Northern Powerhouse Rail.
I thank my honourable friend for his advice, and yes, I am a huge fan of Northern Powerhouse Rail. I went up to Manchester Airport and saw the plan. It's a truly visionary and exciting plan. I think we should definitely be doing it. And might I remind him, it's not just rails in this country that are built by British Steel in Scunthorpe. It may be to the advantage of the House and to the pessimists opposite to know that the TGV in France runs on rails made in Scunthorpe as well.
Laura Smith.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister recently appalled and offended many people when he criticised investigating historic child abuse as spaffing money up the wall. What does he have to say to those who have suffered at the hands of predatory paedophiles, especially those who are still seeking justice, and will he now apologise?
Mr. Speaker, this country is proud of its record as a world leader in fighting child sexual abuse, and under this government we will continue to lengthen that lead.
Justine Greeley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hope the Prime Minister agrees that having a general election might be something that the Leader of the Opposition wants, but it's not what the country needs, and it won't resolve the Brexit deadlock. Will he bring back any Brexit plan and put it to this House, then put it to the people? Because that is the way that we can finally break the Brexit deadlock, unite the country, move on and get on to fixing the real problems that Britain faces, not least improving social mobility and achieving equality of opportunity.
Thank you. Well, I'm my right honourable friend and I go back a long way, and she and I agree on so many things. But on this I'm afraid, respectfully disagree, Mr. Speaker, because I think having a second referendum, which is now the policy of the party opposite, have a second, that's where they are. That's where they are. It wasn't before, but they are now the party. They are now the party of return or revoke. Having a second referendum would, I think, be catastrophic for our union, because it would undermine, of course, our most important case, that when you have a referendum, that deeply divisive and toxic event should only take place once in every generation. That was what we said to the people of Scotland. How could we look at them again and refuse and not have a second referendum in Scotland if we have another referendum on the EU in the UK? It's simply the wrong thing to do.
Stephen Timms.
Given the welcome change of his recognition of the benefits of migration, will he bring forward the reconsideration system proposed by the former Home Secretary, now Chancellor, for overseas students falsely accused of cheating by the US firm ETS in its English language tests, so that those students finally have the chance to clear their name?
Thank you. I thank the right honourable gentleman. I've been made aware by my right honourable friend of the issue to which he refers, and I will make sure that we write him about what we are doing to address it. But as he knows, I have a long-standing commitment to supporting the freedom of people to come to this country. I think if you look at my political record, I don't think you'll genuinely find anybody who's done more to champion the rights of immigrants to this city or to this country.
Mary Robinson.
Speaker, I welcome the Prime Minister's commitment to infrastructure, and in addition to his support of Northern Powerhouse Rail, could I also ask him to consider looking at ways that HS3 can be constructed from the north, thus maximising the jobs in our region?
Mr. Speaker, I've asked Doug Oakerby, the former chairman of Crossrail, to have a brief 6-week study of the profiling of the spend on HS2 to discover exactly whether such a proposal might have merit, and I will make sure that I revert to my honourable friend as fast as possible upon his conclusion.
Bridget Phillipson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Following today's deeply troubling news from Nissan, has the Prime Minister spoken to the company about what impact this may have in Sunderland? And following his statement here in the House today, what reassurance can he really offer to the tens of thousands of workers in Sunderland and across the North East whose jobs and livelihoods depend on Nissan's continued success?
Mr. Speaker, the automotive sector globally is suffering a contraction as a result partly of the diesel crisis and the move to EVs and what is happening with demand in China. That is a fact. There is, as far as I know, no impact, and we've discussed this already, no impact in Sunderland yet. But I draw her attention again to the massive investments that are nonetheless happening in our country, in Oxford, in Birmingham, of world-beating companies investing in British technology. It's worth billions of pounds, and we should salute it.
Are you desperate to come in? Vicky Ford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I congratulate my right honourable friend, welcome him to his job and wish him the very best of luck in achieving an amicable agreement with the EU. On the subject of violent crime, which concerns many of my constituents, in Essex we are already seeing the impact from the extra 360 police that have been added to the force. So can I thank him for promising 20,000 more across the country, and will Essex get its fair share?
I thank my honourable friend, and I want to pay tribute also to the work of Roger Hurst, the PCC in Essex, who I think is also helping to deliver the numbers achieved. But it is good news that we're going to have even more, 20,000 more, and my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, is working on that right away.
Stuart Malcolm MacDonald.
Yes. Why does the Prime Minister refuse point blank to answer any questions put to him about his relationship with the former Russian arms dealer Alexander Temerkel, or indeed the owner of the Evening Standard, Evgeny Lebedev, who's written in glowing terms about President Putin and Assad? What exactly do they have on him?
Mr. Speaker, I struggle to find a point in the right honourable gentleman's question. If he has an allegation that he wishes to make, then I suggest he sends it to me in writing, and I'll be happy to respond.
David Tredennick.
Congratulate him on a brilliant start, and particularly supporting the health service. Is he aware that his counterpart in India, Prime Minister Modi, has oversight over 2 health ministries, the Health and Family Affairs Ministry and Ayush, which is the traditional and complementary medicine, which has 7,000 hospitals? Would he make sure his health secretary is in contact with Ayush?
I thank my honourable friend very much, and I congratulate him on his heroic campaign that he has waged to promote alternative medicines and therapies of all kinds. And I feel sure it would be to the benefit of my right honourable friend, the Health Secretary. He's gone off to solve social care. But I think it's very important that we have an open mind about Ayurvedic medicine and other such therapies, but we should approach it on the basis, if I may respectfully say, of science first.
Steve McCabe.
Does his guarantee for EU citizens extend to EU children in the British care system? And if so, how is he going to achieve that without changing the existing arrangements?
Prime Minister.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I believe that it does, and certainly we will make sure that local authorities are aware of their responsibilities.
You, Robert Courts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I welcome the Prime Minister to his place and thank him for the passionate, optimistic defence of free market values that we've heard today. Could I ask him to look at the offer that we give our armed forces, in particular with a view to retention? Could I invite him also to visit RAF Brize Norton to welcome and thank them for the very hard work and the excellent work that they do there, but also to see where perhaps we need a little bit of help?
Mr. Speaker, I will be only too happy to visit my honourable friend in Brize Norton. If I have a feeling I may be going there in the course of my duties anyway. And I congratulate him on the campaign he wages and the interest he shows in our armed services, and particularly in the RAF. And I will make sure that they get the pay they deserve. And I believe that they are getting a new and improved pay settlement on Monday.
Sir Ed Davey.
Prime Minister agree that the UK, Europe and the world face a climate emergency? And if he does, what's his plan?
Speaker, I'm glad that the Right Honourable Gentleman asked that question because, as he knows, it is this party and this government that is leading the world in setting a net zero target by 2050. And of course, there are people who don't think it can be done, Mr. Speaker. There are all sorts of sceptics and pessimists and Brito sceptics who think that this country can't pull it off. But actually we can. And we have cut carbon emissions in this country massively since 2010, and we will continue to do so. And the Right Honourable Gentleman says that it was his achievement. I would remind him, when I was Mayor of London, even though the population of London expanded by 200,000 during my tenure as Mayor, we cut CO2 emissions by 14% with new technology, and that is the approach we will adopt.
Helen Whately.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I share my right honourable friend's optimism for a deal, not least if we are fully prepared for no deal. As a Kent MP, can I ask him to make sure that those preparations will keep freight flowing through Kent's ports?
Minister. I thank my honourable friend. She's quite right. It is vital that we give business in Kent and hauliers of all kinds the logistical support that they need, and a huge amount of work, as she knows, is already being done.
Alison McGovern.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's quite clear that this is now a vote leave government, and contrary to what he just said to my friend for Gateshead, he has been clear about the possibility of a no-deal Brexit. So, Mr. Speaker, can I take him back to his words as part of vote leave? He said on the 1st of June 2016, no change to the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic, and the day before the referendum, he said he wanted to reassure people that voting leave would mean that there won't be a sudden change that disrupts the economy. No change to the border, no sudden change to the economy. Does he stand by his promises? Yes or no?